Umibig ka ng tunay. Minahal mo kami ng buo. Mapanatag ka, anak ko. Hindi mapupunta sa wala ang iyong mga pagtitiis at pagmamalasakit sa bayang ito.
¡Apunte! ¡Fuego!
So a pleasant morning, everyone. So we are the group that is assigned to discuss to you the trial and execution of Jose Rizal. But before we go through our discussion, let me introduce to you first the basic information or background of Jose Protasio Rizal Mercado E. Alonso Realonda. So he was born on June 19, 1861 in Calamba, Philippines. So since we all know the basic information or the basic background of Jose Rizal, so we can now proceed to our main topic which is the trial and execution of our national hero Jose Rizal. Chapter 23 covers the last trip abroad of Jose Rizal. So Jose Rizal was kept as a guest on board in the Spanish cruiser Castilla. So Rizal is no longer an exile, so Rizal had a pleasant trip from Dapitan to Manila with the delightful stopovers in Dumaguete, Cebu, Iloilo, Capiz, and Romblon. So he missed the regular steamer in Isla de Luzon, which sailed to Spain the day before he arrived in Manila Bay. While waiting for the next ship, he was kept as a guest in the Spanish cruiser Castilla. On August 26, 1896, Andres Bonifacio and the Katipunan raised the cry revolution in the hills of Balintawak, a few miles north of Manila. So Rizal, worried about the raging hostilities, left for Spain on the steamer Isla de Panay on September 3, 1896, and it was his last trip abroad. So from Dapitan to Manila, leaving Dapitan at midnight July 31, 1896, the España with Rizal and party on board sailed northward at dawn the next day, Saturday, August 1. It anchored at Dumaguete, capital of Negros Oriental. So in Dumaguete, Rizal visited a friend and a former classmate, Herrero Regidor, who was the judge of the province. He also visited other friends including Periquet and Rufina families. So in the afternoon, he operated on a Spanish captain of the Guardia Civil. So after the Dumaguete voyage, the Espanya left Dumaguete at about 1 p.m. and reached Cebu the following morning. So Rizal was fascinated, of course, of the beauty of the Cebu. So in Cebu, he wrote in his diary, I did 2 operations of strabotomy, 1 operation on the ears and the other of tumor. So in the morning of August 3, Rizal left Cebu going to Iloilo. The voyage was fine, he wrote. At the right we saw Mactan, an island famous for what happened to Magellan, Rizal wrote in his diary. The whole afternoon was magnificent. He saw many islands along our way. The next day, in the morning, we entered Iloilo. Rizal again wrote in his diary. So after the Cebu voyage, again, Rizal landed to Iloilo, went shopping in the city and visited Molo. Of Molo Church, he commented the church is pretty outside and the interior is not bad, considering that it has been painted by a lad. The paintings are most copies of a biblical scenes by Gustave Dore. So from Iloilo, Rizal's ship sailed to Capiz. After a brief stopover, it proceeded towards Manila via Romblon. That's all from the Pitan to Manila. So Rizal misses the ship going to Spain. Rizal was unable to catch the mail ship Isla de Luzon going to Spain. So the Espana arrived in Manila Bay early in the morning of Thursday, August 6, 1896. Unfortunately, Rizal was not able to catch the mail ship Isla de Luzon because it has departed the previous day at 5 p.m. So he was greatly disappointed because he didn't catch the ship going to Spain. But he took these unlucky incidents with abiding resignation. So near midnight of the same day, August 6, Rizal was transferred to the Spanish cruiser Castilla by the order of Gobernador General Ramon Blanco. He was given a good accommodation by the gallant captain Enrico Santalo, who told him that he was not a prisoner but a guest detained on board in order to avoid difficulties from friends and enemies. So Rizal asked the Gobernador General to isolate him and his family in order for him to not cause more troubles to the ship and the voyage and other people inside the ship. So he isolated himself in the ship like he requested. So Rizal stayed on the cruiser about a month from August to September 1896. So that's all. The outbreak of the Philippine Revolution. While Rizal was patiently waiting on the cruiser Castilla for the next steamer to take him to Spain, portentous events occurred, presaging the downfall of Spanish power in Asia. So on the fateful evening of August 19, 1896, the Katipunan plot to overthrow the Spanish rule by means of revolution was discovered by Fray Mariano Gil, Agustinian cura of Tondo. This startling incident struck terror in the hearts of the Spanish officials and residents, producing hysteria of vindictive retaliation against the Filipino patriots. So the tumult produced by the discovery of the Katipunan plot was aggravated by the cry of Balintawak, which was raised by Bonifacio and his valiant Katipuneros on August 12, 1896. So at sunrise of August 30, the revolutionists led by Bonifacio and Jacinto attacked San Juan near the city of Manila, but they were repulsed with heavy losses. In the afternoon after the Battle of San Juan, Gobernador General Blanco proclaimed a state of war in the first 8 provinces for rising in arms against Spain to Manila as a province: Bulacan, Cavite, Batangas, Laguna, Pampanga, Nueva Ecija, and Tarlac. So Rizal learned of the eruption of the revolution and the raging battles around Manila through newspapers he read in the Castilla. So he was worried for 2 reasons. So first is the violent revolution, which he sincerely believed that to be premature and would only cause much suffering and terrible loss of human lives and properties had started. And the second one is it would arouse Spanish vengeance against all Filipino patriots. So the departure for Spain on August 30, 1986, the day when the state of war was proclaimed in the 8 provinces, Rizal received from Governor General Blanco 2 letters of introduction for the Minister of War and for the Minister of Colonies, with a covering letter which absolved him from all the blame of the raging revolution. On September 2, 1896, the day before his departure for Spain, Rizal, on board the Castilla, wrote to his mother a letter. At 6 p.m. on September 2, Rizal was transferred to the steamer Isla de Panay, which was sailing for Barcelona, Spain. The next morning, September 3, the steamer left Manila Bay. At last, Rizal's last trip to Spain began. Among his fellow passengers on the board were Don Pedro Rojas, rich Manila Creole industrialist and friend, and his son named Periquin. Rizal and Singapore. The Isla de Panay arrived at Singapore in the evening of September 7. The following morning, Rizal and the passengers went up ashore for sightseeing and shopping for souvenirs. In his travel diary, Rizal wrote, "I have observed some changes. There are more Chinese merchants and less Indian. I bought a Chinese gown. Singapore has changed much since I saw it for the first time in 1882, Rizal said. Don Pedro with his son disembarked at Singapore. He advised Rizal to stay behind too and take advantage of the protection of the British law. Rizal did not heed the advice. Several Filipino residents of Singapore, headed by Don Manuel Camus, boarded the steamer, urging him to stay in Singapore to save his life. He also ignored their appeal because he had given his word to honor Governor General Blanco and he did not like to break it. So the victim of Spanish duplicity, by refusing to break his word of honor in Singapore, Rizal sealed his own doom. For without his knowledge, Governor General Franco was secretly conspiring with the Ministers of War and Colonies or Ultramar for his destruction. So great hero and genius that he was, Rizal proved to be as gullible as Sultan Zaid, another victim of Spanish intrigue. For all his wonderful talents, Rizal was, after all, a mortal man who committed mistakes, and one of his greatest mistakes was to believe that Governor General Blanco was a man of honor and a friend because he allowed him to go as a freeman to Spain to become a physician surgeon of the Spanish army in Cuba, where a bloody revolution was raging, and gave him two nice letters of introduction addressed to the Spanish ministers. So the truth of the matter is now substantiated by the declassified documents of the ministries of war and the colonies was that Blanco was his implacable foe. He regarded him as a dangerous Filipino who was responsible for the raging Philippine Revolution and therefore plotted his doom. Rizal was unaware that his departure from Manila, Blanco and the Ministries of War and Colonies were exchanging coded telegrams and messages and confidential messages for his arrest upon reaching Barcelona, and that he was a deportee and was being secretly kept under surveillance. Rizal arrested before reaching Barcelona. The Isla de Panay with Rizal on board left Singapore at 1 p.m. on September 8. Unaware of the Spanish duplicity, particularly of the Governor General Blanco's infernal deceit, Jose Rizal, he himself happily continued the voyage towards Barcelona without knowing that he is being conspired by Governor General Blanco. On September 25, he saw the steamer Isla de Luzon leaving the Suez Canal, crammed with Spanish troops. 2 days later, Sunday, September 7, he heard from the passengers that a telegram arrived from Manila reporting the execution of Francisco Rojas, Genato, and Osorio. On September 28, a day after the steamer had left port, said Mediterranean terminus of the Suez Canal, a passenger told Rizal the bad news that he would be arrested by order of the General Blanco and would be sent to prison in Quetta, Spanish Morocco. Rizal, shocked by the alarming news, of course, because he is being betrayed by his trusted Governor General Blanco. So Rizal belatedly realized that he was duped by the unscrupulous Spanish officials, particularly the sly Governor General Blanco. With an agonizing heart, he immediately immediately wrote a letter to his best friend Blumentritt that he's discussed in bitterness to Spanish officials. Arrival in Barcelona as a prisoner. About 6:25 p.m. on September 30, the steamer anchored at Malta. Being confined to his cabin, Rizal was not able to visit the famous island fortress of the Christian Crusaders. I saw through a tiny window, he wrote in his diary. The beautiful view of the port, which means the Malta port, wrote in his diaries, which is monumental and magnificent castle in 3 levels, illumined by lingering afternoon lights. So on October 3, at 10 o'clock in the morning, the Isla de Panay arrived in Barcelona. With Rizal, a prisoner on board, the trip from Manila to Barcelona lasted exactly 30 days. He was kept under heavy guard in his cabin for 3 days. His jailer was no longer the ship captain but the military commander of Barcelona, who happened to be General Eulogio Despujol, the same one who ordered his banishment to Dapitan in July 1892. It was one of those coincidences in the lives of men that make history stranger than fiction. At 3 a.m. on October 6, Rizal was awakened by the guards and escorted to the grim and infamous prison fortress named Monjuic. He spent the whole morning in a cell. About 2 in the afternoon, he was taken out of prison by the guards and brought to the headquarters of General Despujol. In the interview, which lasted a quarter an hour, the brusque general told Rizal that he would be shipped back to Manila on board the transport ship Colon, which was leaving that evening. After the interview, Rizal was taken aboard the Colon, which was full of soldiers and officers and their families. At 8 p.m. October 6, the ship left Barcelona with Rizal on board. That's all. Thank you.
Good day everyone, my name is Jeff Chris Armonte Alto and I'll be presenting the chapter 24, The Last Homecoming and Trial. Rizal's homecoming in 1896, the last in his life, was his saddest return to his beloved native land. So why? He knew he was facing the supreme test, which might mean the sacrifice of his life, but he was unafraid. A martyr's last homecoming, day by day since leaving Barcelona on Tuesday, October 6, 1896, Rizal conscientiously recorded the events on his diary. He was given a good cabin in the second class and although strictly guarded, he was courteously treated by the army officers. The officer on duty, he wrote in his diary, seems amiable, refined, polite, consistent with the seriousness of his duty. On October 8, a friendly officer told Rizal that the Madrid newspapers were full of stories about the bloody revolution in the Philippines and were blaming him for it. Realizing the adverse and unjust public opinion, he thanked God for giving him the chance to return in order to confront his slanderers and to vindicate his name. The unsuccessful rescue in Singapore. News of Rizal's predicament reached his friends in Europe and Singapore. From London, Dr. Antonio Marigidor and Sixto Lopez dispatched frantic telegrams to an English lawyer in Singapore named Ufort to rescue Rizal from the Spanish steamer when it reached Singapore by means of a writ of habeas corpus. When the Colon arrived in Singapore, Attorney Fort instituted proceeding to the Singapore court for the removal of Rizal from the steamer. The crux of Mr. Fort's legal contention was that Rizal was illegally detained on the Spanish steamer. Unfortunately, Chief Justice Lionel Cox denied the writ on the ground that the Colon was carrying Spanish troops to the Philippines. Hence, it is a warship of a foreign power, which under international law was beyond the jurisdiction of the Singapore authorities. Arrival in Manila. On November 3, the column reached Manila, where it was greeted with wild rejoicings by the Spaniards and friars because it brought more reinforcement and military supplies. While the Spanish community was exulting with joy, Rizal was quietly transferred under heavy guard from the ship to Fort Santiago. Meanwhile, the Spanish authorities fished for evidence against Rizal. Many Filipino patriots, including Diodato Arellano, Dr. Pio Valenzuela, Moises Salvador, Jose Dizon, Domingo Franco, Timoteo Paez, and Pedro Soriano Lactao were brutally tortured to implicate Rizal. Rizal's own brother Pasiano was arrested and cruelly tortured. Preliminary investigation. On November 20, the preliminary investigation began. Rizal, the accused, appeared before the judge advocate, Colonel Francisco Oleyi. He was subjected to a groveling 5-day investigation. He was informed of the charges against him. He answered the question asked by the judge advocate, but he was not permitted to confront those who testified against him. Two kinds of evidence were presented against Rizal, namely documentary and testimonial. Rizal chooses his defender. The only right given to Rizal by the Spanish authorities was to choose his defense counsel. And even this was highly restricted, for he had to choose only from the list submitted to him. Rizal chose Don Luis Taviel de Andrade, first lieutenant of the artillery, to be his defender. Lieutenant Luis Taviel de Andrade proved to be the brother of Lieutenant Jose Taviel de Andrade, Rizal's bodyguard in Calamba in 1887. Upon being notified by the authorities that he was chosen to defend the accused, he gladly accepted the task. He had previously heard from his brother Jose Taviel de Andrade about Dr. Rizal of Calamba. Reading of information of charges to the accused. On December 11, the information of charges was formally read to Rizal in his prison cell with his counsel present. He was accused of being the principal organizer of the Living Soul of the Filipino insurrection, the founder of societies, periodicals and books dedicated to fomenting and propagating ideas of rebellion. Dominguez forwarded the papers of the Rizal case to Malacañang Palace on December 13, the same day when General Camilo G. D. Pilavioja, with the help of the powerful Dominican friars, became Governor General of the Philippines, succeeding General Blanco. The withdrawal of Blanco from the gubernatorial office sealed Rizal's fate, for he was more humane in character than the ruthless Pulavieja, and moreover, he firmly believed that Rizal was not a traitor to Spain. Rizal's manifesto to his people. On December 15, Rizal wrote a manifesto to his people appealing to them to stop the necessary shedding of blood and to achieve their liberties by means of education and industry. Rizal's saddest Christmas. On December 25, 1896 was Christmas. On that day, all Christendom joyously celebrated the birthday of Christ, who was born to redeem mankind and to bring peace and brotherhood to all men and earth. What a dark and cheerless Christmas for Rizal. He who was accustomed to spend his merry season in the company of his beloved family and dear friends found himself alone and depressed in a dreary prison cell. The Trial of Rizal. The trial of Rizal was an eloquent proof of Spanish injustice and misrule. Alcocer arose and delivered a long speech summarizing the charges against Rizal and urged the court to give the verdict of death to the accused. The Spanish spectators applauded noisily Alcocer's petition for the sentence of death. After the prosecuting attorney finished his spirited harangue, defense counsel Taviel de Andrade took the floor and read his eloquent defense of Rizal. He ended his defense with a noble but futile admonition to the members of the military. The judges cannot be vindictive. The judges can only be just. The military court, prejudiced as it was, remained indifferent in Rizal's pleading. The President, Lieutenant Colonel Tagores Arjona, considered the trial over and ordered the hall cleared. After a short deliberation, the military court unanimously voted for the sentence of death. Polavieja signs Rizal's execution. On December 28, Polavieja approved the decision of the court-martial and ordered Rizal to be shot at 7 o'clock in the morning of December 30 at Bagumbayan Field, or also known as Luneta. For compliance and the rest that may correspond, let this be returned to the Judge Advocate, Captain Don Rafael Dominguez. And for Camilo G. de Polavieja, for signing the fatal document ordering the execution of Dr. Rizal, Governor General Polavieja won the eternal odium of the Filipino people. He and other Spanish officials who were responsible for the death of Rizal will evermore remain as obnoxious villains in Philippine history. So that would be all, and proceed to the next presenter.
Chapter 25, Martyrdom at Bagong Bayan, Last Hours of Rizal. At 6 a.m., December 29, Captain Rafael Dominguez takes charge of all arrangement for the execution of the condemned prisoner. Read the death sentence to Rizal, to be shot at the back by a firing squad at 7 a.m. at Bagong Bayan. At 7 a.m., after the reading of the death sentence, Rizal was moved to prison chapel where he spent his last moments. His first visitors was Father Miguel Sadera Mata, a rector of Ateneo Municipal, and Father Luis Vesa, a Jesuit teacher. At 7:15, Rizal was reminded Father Vesa of the statuette of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, which he carved with his penknife as an Ateneo student. He gave it to Rizal and later placed it on his writing table. At 8 a.m., Father Antonio Rosel arrived to relieve Father Vesa. Rizal invited him to join him for a breakfast, which he did. After breakfast, Lieutenant Luis Taviel de Andrade came and he thanked him for his gallant services.
At 9 a.m., Father Federico Faura arrived. Rizal reminded him that he said that Rizal would lose his head for writing Noli, saying that he is a prophet. At 10 a.m., Father Jose Villaclara, Rizal's teacher at Ateneo, and Vicente Balaguer, a Jesuit missionary in Dapitan who had befriended him during his exile, is also visited. Santiago Mataix, a Spanish journalist, interviewed him for the newspaper El Heraldo de Madrid. At 12 a.m. to 3:30 p.m., Rizal was left alone. After lunch, he wrote his farewell poem and hid it inside the alcohol cooking stove, which was given by Paz Pardo de Tavera during his visit in Paris in 1890. Then, Rizal wrote his letter to Blumentritt. At 3:30 p.m., Father Balaguer returned to the Fort Santiago and discussed with Rizal about his retraction of the anti-Catholic ideas in his writings and membership in Masonry. At 4 p.m., Rizal's mother arrived. He knelt down and kissed her hands, begging her to forgive him. They both crying when guards separated them. Then Trinidad came and fetched his mother. Then Rizal gave Trinidad the alcohol cooking stove and whispered to her in English, "There's something inside." Father Villaclara and Stanislao March and Father Rosel entered the cell. At 6 p.m., Don Salvino Lopez Tunion, a dean of Manila Cathedral, visited Rizal. At 8 p.m., Rizal had his last supper. He informed Captain Dominguez that he forgave his enemies, even the military judges who condemned him to death. At 9:30, Don Gaspar Sistanio, a fiscal of the Royal Audiencia of Manila. He left with good impression of Rizal's intelligence and noble character. At 10 p.m., the draft of the retraction sent by the anti-Filipino Archbishop Bernardino Nozaleda was submitted by Father Balaguer to Rizal for signature but rejected. Because it was too long, so Father Balaguer gave a shorter version which was prepared by Father Pio P, a superior of the Jesuit society in the Philippines. Then Rizal wrote his retraction in which he abjured Masonry and his religious ideas which were anti-Catholic. The retraction was now a controversial document. Rizalist scholars, either Masons or anti-Catholic, claimed into a forgery, while Catholic Rizalists claimed it to be genuine. At 5:30 a.m., Josephine Bracken, accompanied by a sister of Rizal, Josefa. Rizal gave her a religious book, Imitation of Christ by Father Thomas A. Kempts. At 6 a.m., Dr. Jose Rizal wrote his letter for his beloved parents. A death march at Bagong Bayan. At 6:30 a.m., a trumpet sounded which signed to begin the death march to Bagong Bayan. He was with Lieutenant Luis Taviel de Andrade and two Jesuits, Father March and Father Villaclara, and Rizal saw the Ateneo. Martyrdom of a hero. He bade farewell to both Jesuits and his defense council. He firmly clapped his hands, even his hands were tied. One of the priests blessed him and offered him a crucifix to kiss. Dr. Jose Rizal requested to be shot facing the firing squad, which the commander denied. A Spanish military physician, Dr. Felipe Ruiz Castillo, asked his permission to feel his pulse. Was amazed. Dr. Castillo was amazed to find it normal, showing that Rizal isn't afraid to die. Dr. Jose Rizal fell on the ground dead, facing the morning sun. It was exactly 7:03 when he died, in the bloom of manhood. Age, 35 years, 5 months and 11 days. 14 years before the execution of Rizal predicted in his own dream that he would die on December 30th. He was a med student in Madrid. Aftermath of a hero martyr death. The friars, not Jesuits, and corrupted officials, Polavieja exulted with sadistic joy. Spanish spectators shouted, "Viva España, muerta a los traidores!" A long live Spain, death to the traitors. And the Spanish military band played the gay Marcha de Cadiz. They were fully unaware of his history's inexorable tides, for the execution of Rizal presaged the foundation of independent nation. Spanish bullets killed Rizal's brain, but the libertarian ideas spawned by his brain destroyed the Spanish rule in Philippines. Cecilio Apostol, a greatest Filipino epic poet, by his writings, Filipino were awakened Filipino nationalism and paved the way for the Philippine Revolution. He proved that the pen is mightier than the sword. As many splendid genius, writers, scientists, and political martyr, he richly deserved history salute as the national hero of the Philippines.